My name is Olivia Hayes. I am 31 years old, and on my last birthday, my family sent me a message that broke something in me for good. I was at my tiny Austin apartment, icing a store-bought cupcake with my own name on it, when my phone buzzed with a ping from the family group chat. I tapped it, expecting a basic happy birthday. Instead, I saw, "No one's coming to your party." Then another line, "Grow up." There were laughing emojis underneath, and a couple of half-hearted reactions from relatives, like it was the funniest thing in the world that I had even hoped anyone might show up. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, feeling that hot, hollow sting you get when you realize the joke has been you for years. I typed one word back into the chat. Understood. Then I put the cupcake down, opened my banking app, and went straight to the automatic payments section. 5 years. For 5 years, I had been paying $2,000 a month for their rent, on top of their bills, their little emergencies, their nice-to-haves disguised as needs. My thumb hovered for a second. Then I canceled the rent payment. Just like that. The next morning, I drove across town, used the spare key, and took back the SUV that was in my name but parked in their lot. On the way home, I called my bank, shut down every card they could touch, and flagged a few charges I had been pretending not to see. By that night, my phone was lighting up with calls and messages and pure panic. If you want to know how one cruel birthday text turned into the life-changing financial decision that finally made them lose their minds instead of mine, stay with me until the end. I didn't start out as the family ATM. At 26, when I landed my first real job as a data analyst at a fintech company in Austin, I honestly thought I was just being a good daughter, doing what any responsible oldest child would do. My parents had divorced a couple of years earlier. My dad moved to Oklahoma to drive trucks and send the occasional "proud of you kiddo" text, and my mom was suddenly on her own with my little sister in a cramped apartment closer to downtown. One night she called me crying, her voice shaking as she talked about late fees, shut-off notices, and how she didn't know how we're going to make it this month. I remember pacing my tiny studio, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding with this mix of panic and determination. "Don't worry, I've got you," I heard myself say, like I was some kind of superhero. I pulled up my banking app right there while she was still on the line and set up the first rent transfer as temporary help, just until she got back on her feet. $2,000 a month. It sounded like a lot, but in my head I treated it like a short-term project. A few months, maybe a year, then things would calm down. Except they didn't. The little while stretched into months, then into years, and somewhere along the way it stopped being help and became expectation. Every time I tried to talk about scaling back, my mom would sigh dramatically and send a picture of a kitchen table covered in bills, with captions like "Bills piling up again, honey," or "I don't know what we'd do without you." If I took an hour to respond, there'd be a follow-up message. "Everything okay? I was hoping you could send it today." Guilt, wrapped in concern. My sister Maddie was 22 at the time, working part-time at a coffee shop with big plans about becoming a lifestyle influencer. She had hundreds of Pinterest boards, a vision board taped above her bed, and an endless list of things she needed to build her brand. "Hey, Liv, can I use your card for some makeup? It's an investment," she'd say, laughing. "I'll pay you back when my content starts making money." Spoiler: the content came, the money didn't. But the charges definitely did. Sephora, online boutiques, little decor pieces so her room looked aesthetic on TikTok, new mugs for her latte art videos. I'd scroll through Instagram after long days at work and see her posting self-care mornings with captions like, "Remember to treat yourself," while I was the one treating her, quietly, from a gray cubicle filled with spreadsheets. At first, I brushed it off. She was young, I told myself. She'd grow out of it. Meanwhile, my own life shrank around their needs. Every few weeks there'd be another emergency. The car insurance was due, and they had miscalculated. The power bill was higher than expected. The Wi-Fi got cut off by accident and needed to be turned back on right away because Maddie had to upload a brand deal video, which was really a TikTok of her making avocado toast. My mom never once asked me how my work was going, whether my job was stressful, or if I was okay juggling my own rent and student loans on top of theirs. Her texts were always variations on the same theme. Can you help? Just this once. You know your sister is still finding her way. You make so much more than we do. I remember one weekend in particular. I drove in from my place in the suburbs with 2 pizzas, a bottle of cheap wine, and a small gift for my mom's birthday, feeling almost excited. I had stopped buying things for myself, but it felt good to show up with something for her. I imagined we'd have a cozy night in, maybe watch a movie and actually talk. Instead, I walked into the middle of a conversation about a weekend trip Maddie and my mom were planning to San Antonio. They were laughing about outfits and rooftop bars, scrolling through Airbnbs. When I finally asked, "Oh, when are you guys going?" they shrugged and said, "Next month, just a girls' trip," like I wasn't standing right there holding 2 hot pizza boxes. There was no, "Do you want to come?" or "Could you get time off?" Just an unspoken assumption that my role was to pay for the everyday stuff so they could save their energy and money for fun. When the pizza came, I paid. When we went for coffee afterward, I paid. At the counter, my mom patted my arm and joked to the barista, "She's our walking credit card." And Maddie laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world. The barista chuckled politely. I laughed too, because what else was I supposed to do? But on the drive home, stuck in traffic on I-35, that joke echoed in my head louder than any podcast I put on to drown it out. I kept telling myself, this is what family does. You help the ones who are struggling. I told myself that growing up, Mom had done the best she could and I owed her. I told myself Maddie was still finding herself, and it was normal for the older sibling to help. But with every forgotten promise to pay me back, every DM from my sister asking, "Can you just spot me this one thing?" followed by 3 pictures of new shoes on her story. Every time my mom called me only when a bill was due, something inside me shifted. It stopped feeling like love and started feeling like a subscription I'd never signed up for, automatically renewing every month while everyone else pretended it was free. The thing about being used is that it doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in, one little favor at a time, until you look up and realize your entire life has been rearranged around someone else's needs and moods. The year everything really tipped over, it started with my mom figuring out how easy it was to sign up for things online. One afternoon, I got an email thanking me for my new food delivery subscription. I hadn't ordered anything. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I saw the address connected to the account. It was my mom's apartment. When I called to ask about it, she laughed. "Oh, that? I just used your info to set it up because I didn't have time to figure it out." "I thought you wouldn't mind," she said, like she'd borrowed a sweater, not my financial identity. There were already multiple orders on the account. Burgers, coffee, dessert runs, late-night snacks. Nothing life or death. Just convenience. A few weeks later, there were late fees because the card on file declined while I was moving money into savings. I paid them because the alternative was seeing my credit get dinged for charges I hadn't even made. That same year, my sister turned my generosity into content. She started posting cutesy Instagram stories of her girls' days with the caption, "Shout out to my secret supporter," followed by a winking emoji. Friends would comment, "Your boyfriend spoils you so much," and she never corrected them. I stared at those stories, recognizing the shopping bags from my credit card statement, the brunch spots I'd seen in my transactions. I was the secret supporter, And the secret was mostly on me. That was when I began keeping track. It started as a work habit. I lived in spreadsheets, analyzing other people's spending patterns, creating neat reports to explain messy human behavior. One night after a brutal day at the office, I opened a new sheet on my personal laptop and labeled it Family Expenses. I went back through years of bank statements and credit card histories, line by painful line, rent transfers, utility payments, emergency, Venmo requests, random Amazon orders that had shipped to my mom's address, delivery app charges, rideshare trips I never took. I added notes where I remembered the stories they'd told to justify each one. Car broke down, power bill accidentally higher, needed this for content, promise to pay back next month. The numbers added up faster than I expected. Watching that total climb felt like watching a slot machine spin in reverse, years of my work disappearing into their convenience. I started taking screenshots of texts too, the passive-aggressive reminders from my mom. The, "You know I'll pay you back when things calm down," promises from Maddie that never turned into anything. The little jokes about me being obsessed with budgets whenever I tried to bring up my own financial goals. I created a folder on my laptop and tucked everything in there. It felt cold and clinical, gathering evidence against my own family, like I was building a case instead of remembering memories. But the more I saw it all laid out, the harder it became to pretend this was just helping. The worst moment came on a random Tuesday night. I had made an Amazon wish list for myself. Basic stuff, nothing fancy. New socks, a cheap blender, a set of pots that weren't falling apart, a lamp that actually matched my furniture. I meant to send it to a friend as a someday list. Instead, I accidentally dropped the link in the family group chat. My mom responded first with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Look at Miss Moneybags needing us to buy her pots now." Maddie piled on, "Maybe if you stopped acting like our accountant, you could afford them yourself, LOL. A cousin reacted with another laughing emoji. I stared at those messages, feeling my chest tighten and my face go hot even though I was alone in my apartment. I made more money than both of them combined, but I was still eating instant noodles some nights because I was too tired to cook, sending $2,000 a month to people who mocked me for wanting decent cookware. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just quietly deleted the wish list and added those screenshots to the folder. A week later, after getting yet another call from a customer service rep about a rideshare account linked to my card that I had never used, I did something I never thought I'd do. I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Sitting in his office felt surreal. I laid out the basics, my voice shaking at first. My name on the lease? No. My credit cards? Yes. My mom and sister as authorized users? Yes. Multiple services opened with my info? Yes. He didn't even blink. He'd heard it all before. He told me exactly what I needed to do to protect myself. Remove them from every account I could. Document everything. Put alerts on my credit. Put passwords and two-factor authentication on anything that mattered. It's not disloyal to protect yourself, he said. If you came in here describing a boyfriend doing this, I'd tell you to run. You'd tell your own clients the same thing. That line lodged itself in my brain like a hook. I spent my days teaching computers to flag risky behavior in strangers' accounts, and then went home and ignored all the red flags in my own. So I opened a new savings account in just my name, one they didn't even know existed, and started quietly funneling every spare dollar into it. I bumped up my 401k contributions. I read about index funds and started investing modestly. I set credit alerts on my phone. I didn't say anything in the group chat. On the surface, I played the same role I always had, the reliable one, the fixer, the walking credit card. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. I was done pretending this was normal. I was done believing that love meant going broke for people who wouldn't even buy me a birthday cake. I didn't know exactly when I would finally cut them off. I just knew that when the right moment came, I wanted to be ready. I had no idea that moment would arrive wrapped in a group chat notification on my 31st birthday. 4 simple words that would change everything. I didn't go over there to ask for an apology. By the time the weekend rolled around after my birthday, I was past that. I went because I wanted them to see, in black and white, exactly what they had been doing to me. I parked a block away from their building in Austin, the same one I'd been paying for all these years, and sat in the car for a minute with my laptop bag on the passenger seat and a folder full of paper on my lap. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking. Instead, I just felt done. When my mom opened the door, she tried to act like everything was normal. "Olivia, sweetheart, you didn't have to come all this way," she said, stepping aside. The apartment looked the same as always. Cute throw pillows, plants in every corner, a ring light still set up near the window for Maddie's videos. You'd never guess they were supposedly drowning in bills from the way the place looked. Maddie was on the couch scrolling her phone. She barely glanced up. "Hey," she said, like I had just dropped by for coffee. No one mentioned the birthday text. No one mentioned the rent payment that had bounced. My mom poured herself a cup of coffee and launched straight into it. "So, about this little stunt with the bank," she started, her tone light but sharp underneath. "You really scared your sister and me. The rent bounced, the landlord called, it was a whole mess. I know you had a bad day, but canceling the payment like that? It was a bit dramatic." I pulled out a chair at the small dining table and opened my laptop. "I didn't have a bad day," I said. "I made a decision." Maddie rolled her eyes. "Liv, come on. You're overreacting. It was a joke in the chat. You know how Mom is." I ignored her and clicked open the spreadsheet, the one I had labeled Family Expense Report. Turning the screen so they could see, I spoke like I was presenting at work, calm and clear. "I want you both to understand what you're asking me to just keep doing," I said. So I broke it down. In the first row was the total we all knew in some vague way, but had never had to look at. 5 years of rent at $2,000 a month. $120,000. Underneath were columns for utilities, internet, car insurance, streaming services, random transfers I'd labeled emergency, or just this once. The final total at the bottom made even me swallow. My mom's face changed first. "That can't be right," she whispered. "It's right," I said. "I'm literally paid to work with numbers." I clicked over to another sheet. This one showed specific charges from my cards tied to their address: delivery apps, beauty stores, brunch spots, ride shares. I had highlighted anything over a certain amount. Then I slid the folder across the table. "Those are printed statements," I added. "In case you think I photoshopped this." My mom flipped through the pages, her lips tightening. "We were counting on you," she said finally. "You know I don't make much at the clinic. Your sister's still trying to build her following. Families help each other. That's what this is." I shook my head. "This isn't help, Mom. This is me funding your lifestyle while you make fun of me for wanting pots and pans." Maddie sat up straighter, crossing her arms. "You're acting like some kind of CFO," she snapped. "Like we're your employees and you're doing some audit or whatever. It's gross, Olivia. We're family." I met her eyes. "If you were a company," I said quietly, "I'd shut you down for burning your only investor and then laughing about it." The room went silent. I could hear a car passing on the street below. Someone's music faint through the window. Then my mom pushed the folder away like it offended her. "You didn't have to keep score like this," she said. "We trusted you. We assumed you understood. After everything I did for you when you were a kid." There it was. The guilt card. I had been waiting for it. I took a breath. I do remember, I said. I also remember you using my social security number to set up accounts without asking. I remember you calling me your walking credit card in public. And I remember the birthday message this week. No one's coming to your party. Grow up. My mom flinched like I had slapped her. Maddie's face went red. That was a joke, she insisted. You always take everything so seriously. God, no wonder you're alone. I stood up, closing the laptop with a soft click. Here's what's serious, I said. I talked to a lawyer. I've already started the process of removing you from every account you're on. My credit is locked down. Anything you open in my name from now on will be reported as fraud. There will be no more rent payments, no more emergency transfers, no more surprise subscriptions. You will have to talk to your landlord like grown adults and figure it out yourselves. My mom's eyes filled with tears. You can't just abandon us like this, she said. We don't have anyone else. You had me, I replied. And you treated me like a resource, not a person. Maddie pushed back from the couch. You're ruining our lives over a text message, she shouted. You're so ungrateful. Do you know how much I've promoted you on my socials? People think you're this successful, generous sister because of me. I almost laughed at that. Instead, I picked up my laptop and slid the folder back into my bag. What I'm doing, I said, is stopping a pattern I should have ended a long time ago. You'll survive without my money. You just won't like it. As I walked to the door, my mom called after me, her voice breaking. Olivia, please, think about this. We're family. I paused with my hand on the knob, looking back just long enough to say, that's exactly what I've been thinking about. For 5 years. Then I stepped out into the hallway and closed the door behind me. Their voices rose on the other side, panicked and angry. But for the first time in a long time, none of that noise had the power to reach my wallet. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done at first. I went home, put my laptop bag on the kitchen counter, and just stood there in the quiet of my little apartment, listening to the fridge hum and my heartbeat finally slow down. My phone buzzed over and over on the table, but I flipped it face down and made myself a grilled cheese like it was any other night. It wasn't, obviously, but normalcy felt like armor. Later, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I opened Reddit. I'd lurked on those personal finance and toxic family subreddits for years, nodding along to strangers' stories and thinking, wow, that's rough, never quite seeing myself in them. Now, scrolling with my thumb, I realized I'd become one of those stories. On impulse, I made a throwaway account. No real name, no identifiable details. Just a username no one would connect to me. I clicked Create Post and stared at the blank box. At first, I thought I'd just vent, but the data analyst in me took over. I laid out the facts like a case study. For 5 years, I've paid my mom and sister's rent, utilities, and emergencies, totaling over $120K, I wrote. I explained the authorized user cards, the surprise subscriptions, the joke in the family group chat on my birthday. No one's coming to your party, grow up. I described canceling the rent, taking back the car, shutting down the cards. I didn't call my mom a monster or my sister a leech. I didn't need to. The numbers and the quotes spoke loud enough. I ended the post with a simple line. I'm finally choosing myself. I feel guilty and relieved at the same time. I don't know what comes next. I hit post before I could overthink it. Then, because apparently I was in a reckless mood, I opened TikTok. I'd never been the type to make videos, but I knew how fast they spread. I set up my phone on the counter, hit record, and filmed just my hands flipping through blurred-out bank statements and a spreadsheet on my laptop. Over it, I recorded a voiceover, keeping it calm and anonymous. I didn't show faces or names, just receipts and a pattern. POV. Your family has treated you like a bank for 5 years, And on your birthday, they tell you no one's coming to your party, I said. So you cancel the rent payment, take back the car, and shut down every card they can touch. I mentioned the total amount I'd paid, the lawyer. The moment I realized helping had turned into enabling, I ended with, "This isn't about revenge, it's about survival." I posted it and put my phone down, fully expecting it to vanish into the algorithm. It didn't. Within an hour, Reddit started blowing up. Comments rolled in. People telling me I was not crazy, that this was financial abuse, that I was allowed to step away. Some shared their own stories about parents draining their accounts, siblings borrowing money and never paying it back, the guilt that came with saying no. A few were harsh, accusing me of being cold, but they were drowned out quickly by hundreds of others saying things like, "You are literally saving your own future." And if someone posted this and said it was their partner, we'd all tell them to run. On TikTok, the video started picking up views too. Strangers stitched it, talking into their cameras about how they'd been the responsible one in their families. One person said, "If this is you, thank you for reminding me I'm not a bad person for having boundaries." Another wrote, "My therapist has been telling me to do exactly what you did. I needed to see this." It was surreal, sitting on my cheap couch in my mismatched pajamas while thousands of people dissected my life choices in real time. I didn't respond to most of them. I hearted a few, bookmarked some longer comments that made me feel seen. Mostly, I just watched, feeling something inside me unclench that I hadn't even realized was tight. For the first time, the narrative didn't belong to my mom sighing about bills or my sister joking about me being their walking credit card. It belonged to me. Of course, the internet has a way of leaking into real life. I don't know which cousin or old classmate stumbled across my story first, but within a couple days, my mom's Facebook page lit up with a vague, angry status. "Funny how some people will run to the internet and twist things to make their own family look like villains," she wrote. "After all I've sacrificed, I get stabbed in the back for likes and attention." There were the usual sympathy comments from her friends. "You raised her better. Kids these days have no loyalty." All that. Maddie followed with her own TikTok, tearful and soft-lit, talking about family misunderstandings and mental health, and how some people don't understand how hard it is to chase your dreams without support. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. I recognized the apartment, the same throw pillows I'd paid for. In the comments, a few of her followers defended her, calling me controlling and selfish in abstract terms. But not everyone bought it. Under her video, I saw one comment that said, "If this is about that spreadsheet girl, I saw her side too. Maybe listen instead of playing victim." I didn't engage. I didn't out them. I didn't post screenshots of their birthday message or their walking credit card jokes, even though every petty part of me wanted to. I kept my story general, focused on patterns and lessons, not names and vengeance. This was my line. I wanted to reclaim my life, not destroy theirs. Late one night, I got a DM from someone I hadn't talked to since college, a guy I'd sat next to in statistics. "Hey, Liv," he wrote. "I'm pretty sure that Reddit post was you. If it was, I just want you to know your story snapped me out of something I was stuck in with my own family. You're not wrong. You're brave." I stared at that message for a long time before answering. "Thanks," I finally typed. "I don't feel brave. I just feel tired." He sent back, "Sometimes tired is what finally makes us change." As the days went on, the posts slowed down, the comments settled, and the internet moved on to its next drama. My mom and sister didn't. My voicemail filled with messages from my mother, swinging between fury and pleading. Maddie tried every angle: guilt, sarcasm, nostalgia. But now, instead of answering them immediately like I used to, I let them sit. I listened with the same detached attention I gave to data at work. For once, their voices were just noise in the background, not commands I had to follow. And with every muted call and declined message, it sank in a little deeper. I had said no in public and in private. The world hadn't ended. In fact, it was finally opening up in front of me. Evictions don't happen in a dramatic movie kind of way when you're not the one getting kicked out. From my side, it started as a voicemail from my mother, her voice tight and high-pitched, saying the landlord had lost his mind and was threatening us with papers. I knew exactly what papers she meant. When you stop sending $2,000 every month, eventually the math catches up. A week later, my aunt texted me a photo she clearly wasn't supposed to send. It was a crumpled notice taped to my mom's apartment door, the word eviction bold at the top. No context, just the picture and a line from my aunt. Heard you cut them off. Not saying you're wrong. Just, wow. I stared at it on my lunch break, my coworkers laughing about something in the break room, while my whole old life was being peeled off a door in downtown Austin. I didn't rush in to fix it. That was the old version of me. Instead, I put my phone face down, finished my sandwich, and went back to my dashboard, watching numbers and charts that, for once, didn't include my family. The next waves came from Maddie. First, it was angry texts. You humiliated us. We had to talk to the landlord like we're deadbeats. You really don't care if we end up on the street. Then, slowly, the tone shifted. We might have to move in with Aunt Carol. There's no room. The car insurance lapsed. I had to Uber to work. Her aesthetic coffee videos changed too. Fewer outfit hauls, more clips filmed in dimmer corners. One day, I noticed she had stopped tagging the apartment location in her posts. When the eviction finally went through, my mom left me a voicemail in full meltdown mode. Between sobs, she said the landlord had given them a final deadline, and they couldn't make it. We're selling everything we can, she cried. Your sister had to sell half her makeup. We're packing our lives into boxes. How can you watch this happen and do nothing? I listened to that voicemail exactly once. Then I archived it. She wasn't asking how I had felt all those years pulling my own life apart to keep theirs comfortable. She was still only asking what I could give. They ended up in a small house on the far edge of town, sharing a room at a distant relative's place. I know because my aunt told me, not because my mom did. Maddie's hours got cut at the coffee shop after she missed too many shifts juggling rides and drama. On TikTok, her follower count froze, then slipped. There's only so long you can sell a luxury lifestyle when you're posting from a lumpy futon. A few weeks after the move, an email arrived in my personal inbox with a subject line that made my stomach lurch. Please, from your mother. She had attached old photos, me at 7 with a missing front tooth, grinning next to a lopsided birthday cake, me at 12 in a thrift store dress before a school concert, me hugging her in a hospital hallway after she broke her wrist when I was in high school. The message was long, winding through every sacrifice she said she had made, every late night, every packed lunch. I know we haven't been perfect, she wrote, but family is all we have. Please reconsider, just until we get back on our feet. Do it for the little girl in these pictures. Do it for the mother who raised you alone. For a second, I almost folded. Those photos hit harder than any angry voicemail. I could feel that old reflex flare up, the one that said, "Fix this. You're the responsible one. They need you." My cursor hovered over reply, then I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Family Expenses. I scrolled through the screenshots, the birthday message, the walking credit card joke to the barista, the Amazon wish list they mocked, the food delivery account I never signed up for, the spreadsheet total. More than $120,000 and 5 years of my life funneled into people who could only see me as a solution, never as a person. I clicked back to the email, read the line, "We haven't been perfect again," and realized how small that phrase was compared to what they had actually done. I didn't write back. Instead, I set up a filter that sent any future emails from her straight to a folder I wouldn't see. Then I went into my phone settings and finally did what I had been avoiding for months. I blocked both of their numbers. It felt brutal, like slamming a door in someone's face. But when I set the phone down, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Cutting them off financially had been the first step. Cutting off access to my attention was the second. With the constant crisis calls gone, something strange happened. I had money and time. My secret savings account, the one I'd been feeding quietly for years, had grown bigger than I'd let myself think about. My investments had done well. One afternoon, sitting at my desk with a spreadsheet of other people's portfolios open, I opened my own and ran the numbers. For the first time, buying a small condo in downtown Austin wasn't a fantasy. It was a line item that made sense. I found a one-bedroom in an older building near the river. Nothing flashy. No rooftop pool, no concierge. Just big windows, hardwood floors, and enough space for a couch that wasn't falling apart. When I wired the down payment, my hands shook harder than they had walking into my mother's apartment. Not from fear this time, but from the weight of realizing this was what my money could do when it wasn't constantly being siphoned off into someone else's emergencies. After closing, I sat down with my laptop and opened my retirement account. There was an option to nickname it. On impulse, I deleted the bland label and typed, "No one's coming to save you." It was a reminder, not in a bitter way, but in a clear one. No one was coming to my party. Fine. I would build a life I didn't need their attendance for. Moving day was quiet. No family members to help, just a couple of movers and a friend from work who brought coffee and a plant. We set up my bed, my secondhand couch, my tiny dining table. When they left, I stood in the middle of the empty living room surrounded by boxes and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. No buzzing phone demanding money. No weight of someone else's unpaid bills sitting on my chest. Just me, four walls I owned, and a city outside my window that felt suddenly full of possibility instead of obligation. That night, I sat on the floor with takeout and watched the lights of downtown blink on. I was technically alone, but for the first time, that word didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like a starting point. A year later, I barely recognized my own life, and I mean that in the best way possible. The condo in downtown Austin didn't feel like a new chapter anymore. It felt like home that actually belonged to me. My days weren't scheduled around crisis texts or rent due dates that weren't even mine. Mornings started with coffee on my little balcony, watching runners pass by on the trail and listening to the city wake up, instead of refreshing my banking app to make sure my mom's landlord got paid. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at my phone out of old habit, half expecting a "Can you help?" message, and there'd be nothing but a shipping notification for something I'd bought for myself without guilt. That alone felt like a small miracle. I still worked in data, but something shifted after my story went semi-viral. People started reaching out quietly, friends of friends and coworkers who had heard through the grapevine what I'd done without getting the messy details. They'd corner me by the office coffee machine or send a careful email with a subject line like, "Quick question," and say, "Hey, can I ask you something kind of personal about money and family?" At first I was awkward about it, shrugging and saying, "I'm not a therapist." But the more I talked, the more I realized what I'd lived through wasn't just drama. It was a pattern a lot of people were stuck in, and too ashamed to name. Eventually, I did something I never expected. I went part-time at my corporate job and started taking on a few clients as an independent financial advisor on the side, specifically helping people who were tangled up in obligations that looked like love but felt like chains. I rented a tiny office above a yoga studio, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, and set up a cheap desk, two chairs, and a little bookshelf with personal finance books that didn't sound like math textbooks. On the wall behind my desk, I hung a simple framed print with a line I'd written on a sticky note months earlier and couldn't stop thinking about. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to freedom. Every time someone sat across from me, twisting their hands and whispering, "I feel awful, but my parents expect me to pay for everything," or "My brother keeps draining my savings, and if I say no, he tells everyone I abandoned him," I could point to that sign and say, "You're not cutting them off from love. You're building a path back to your own life." Sometimes I told bits of my story when it helped. Never the names, just the shape of it. I'd say, "I used to think being the responsible one meant being responsible for everyone," and watch their shoulders drop a little in relief, like they weren't the only ones. I never used my mom and sister as villains in those conversations. I wasn't interested in turning them into monsters for someone else's entertainment. They were complicated, flawed people who made selfish choices and refused to stop when it hurt me. That was enough. They still posted occasionally, vague things about some people forgetting where they came from or kids who don't appreciate sacrifice. I found out through relatives that they had stabilized in that small house on the edge of town. My mom picked up extra shifts at the clinic and learned to budget with the paycheck she had instead of the one she thought I owed her. Maddie got more hours at work and eventually started making content about budget living and starting over after setbacks, instead of pretending she was living some high-end influencer lifestyle. It wasn't the dramatic crash and burn some people online might have wanted as payback. There was no arrest, no public shaming, no karmic lightning strike. It was just real life. They survived, but they had to adjust, and they had to do it without me as their safety net. The difference was, this time I didn't rush in to soften the landing. I let gravity work. My days filled up with better things than panic and resentment. Weekend hikes around the lake with friends who insisted on splitting the bill and sometimes even paid for me when I forgot my wallet, just because they wanted to. Evenings at book club where no one asked me for my credit card, just my opinion on a messy main character. Online courses in investing and behavioral finance that I took purely because I wanted to, not because I was trying to save anyone but myself. Yoga classes in the studio below my office where I learned how to notice when my body tensed at the word family. Therapy sessions where I finally said out loud that love built on guilt isn't really love at all, and that saying no isn't betrayal, it's self-respect. Looking back, I used to think cutting my family off financially was the most cruel thing I'd ever done. I replayed it in my head at night, wondering if I'd gone too far. Now I see it as the most honest thing I've ever done. I didn't punish them. I didn't ruin their lives. I just stopped participating in a system that was quietly destroying me. The real lesson for me wasn't, never help your family. It was this: help should have an end point, and respect should go both ways. If you're the only one sacrificing, if your yes is the price of keeping the peace, that's not generosity. That's self-erasure. If someone truly loves you, they'll care about how their needs affect your life, not just about whether you say yes again. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect your credit, your savings, your mental health, and your future, even from people who share your last name. Maybe especially from them, because those are the people we're most easily taught to hand our entire selves over to without question. That birthday text used to haunt me. I would replay the words, "No one's coming to your party," like some cruel prophecy about how alone I was destined to be. Now it's just a memory, a turning point I almost want to thank, because it pushed me toward the life I actually needed instead of the one I was obligated to maintain. No one came to my party that year. No balloons, no cake, no group photo for social media. But somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't need a party or their approval to feel worthy. I just needed a life that felt like mine, built on choices I made because they were right for me, not because I was scared of disappointing everyone else. And if you've ever had to draw a hard line with your family about money, or you're staring at your bank account wondering how you somehow became the unpaid provider in your own story, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not a bad son, daughter, sibling, or grandchild for wanting financial boundaries. You are not selfish for wanting a life that isn't constantly on fire. You're allowed to talk to a lawyer, a financial advisor, a therapist, or a trusted friend and build an exit plan. You're allowed to change the rules, even if everyone around you insists the old rules are just how family works. And if you've already done it, if you've already chosen yourself and you're still wrestling with guilt in the middle of the night, I'd love to hear your story too. Because sometimes the thing we're most ashamed to say out loud is exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally believe they're allowed to save themselves.